She hadn't eaten all day, but someone else was hungrier, and that changed everything. It was 9:46 p.m. when Lauren Miller finally sat down, not as a waitress, not as the one taking orders or clearing plates, but just for 5 minutes, as a girl with a tray in her hands and a dream in her eyes. The burger was still hot, the fries still golden and crisp. It was the first real meal she'd allowed herself in 3 days. She'd skipped breakfast to pay for her mother's insulin. She'd walked 5 miles instead of taking the bus. She'd collected coins from tip jars and saved napkins in her purse. Because tonight, just tonight, she wanted to taste something more than sacrifice. But the moment she lifted the tray, she saw them, a man and a woman, soaked, silent, huddled in the corner booth by the window, the one people usually reserved for first dates and birthday surprises. They didn't belong here. Not because they were white, not because they were old, but because they looked misplaced, like grief had walked them into the wrong part of town and left them sitting in the rain. The woman clutched a leather portfolio like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. The man kept patting his coat pocket, over and over and over, like maybe, just maybe, a missing wallet might appear out of guilt. Lauren watched as Sandy, the head waitress, brought over the check. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward. It was humiliating. "We're so sorry," the woman whispered. "We didn't mean to. We just wanted some warmth." Lauren's tray stayed in her hands, but the burger on it no longer felt like dinner. It felt like a decision. Her stomach growled, her fingers trembled, but she moved. 3 steps, 2 breaths, 1 moment she'd never get back. "This one's on me tonight," she said, placing the tray gently in front of them. She didn't wait for thanks. Didn't need to. Her grandmother had always told her, "You give when it's hardest. That's when it means something." The woman's eyes filled with tears. The man's jaw clenched like he was holding back more than hunger. And for the rest of the night, Lauren didn't think much about it. Just a kind act. For strangers, that's all. But 12 hours later, everything changed. Because that leather portfolio, it held documents with gold-embossed seals. Because that man, he wasn't just Harold. He was Harold Whitmore, founder of the most powerful legal foundation in the state. And the woman? She wasn't just hungry, she was watching. The next morning, they weren't at the diner. They were in her boss's office, holding a file with Lauren's name on it. And inside that file, everything she never thought anyone noticed. Her grades, her late shifts, the time she stood outside the clinic arguing for her mother's prescriptions, the nights she stayed late tutoring a boy who couldn't read. That burger she gave up? It wasn't a test, until it was. And kindness, just once, was enough to get her on a list she didn't even know existed. But Lauren didn't know that yet. Not when she walked home in the rain. Not when her mom asked if she'd eaten. Not when she cried quietly in the shower because she'd failed to afford another textbook. She didn't know her world was already shifting. She didn't know someone had written her name on a napkin the night before. All she knew was she was still hungry, and yet she had never felt so full. Before the napkin, before the scholarship, before the offer that would rewrite everything, there was this. Lauren's world began before the dawn. Every morning at 5:12 a.m., without alarm, without question, she rose. Not because she wanted to, because she had to. The air in the house was always colder than it should have been. The radiator rattled like it had a grudge. The window in the kitchen leaked wind no matter how many towels she stuffed into the cracks. She moved quietly past the living room where her mother slept. Not because she liked the couch, but because the bedroom walls trapped the smell of sickness. Marcia Miller hadn't walked in over a year. A stroke had silenced one side of her body and most of her dreams. Lauren slipped a blanket back over her mother's feet. checked the oxygen tank, whispered, "Back soon, Mama," though she knew her mother couldn't always answer. In the narrow bathroom, she ran cold water over her face, letting it bite her into the day. At 6 a.m., she was on her way to the bus stop, coat zipped, fingers numb. Her earbuds buzzed faint gospel through one ear, the other ear always open. For sirens, for strangers, for the world that didn't always make room for girls who looked like her. By 6:30, she clocked in at Carlos's Diner, tucked between a laundromat and a payday loan office on 7th and Laurel. Carlos ran the place like it was a Navy ship. He barked orders, hated excuses, and treated every salt shaker like it was worth its weight in gold. But he respected Lauren, because Lauren never came late, never said no to a double shift. And once, when a customer cursed at her for being too slow, she didn't cry. She just wiped the table and whispered, "God bless your tired heart." Carlos heard it. He'd been laughing about it ever since. In the back corner, behind the kitchen door, Lauren stored her real life in a red backpack. Inside, a folder of community college brochures she was too scared to apply to. A torn acceptance letter from 3 years ago she never used. One Polaroid photo of her and her mom from the days before the wheelchair, and taped to the inside cover of her notebook, a quote from her high school teacher. "You were never meant to be background. You were meant to rewrite the whole script." But rewriting required time and money and rest. Lauren had none of the three. At night, after her shift, she walked the 4 miles home because her bus fare went to her mother's medication. She studied between refilling ketchup bottles. She read case studies on non-profit work in the break room. She watched legal documentaries like they were Marvel movies. And every Friday she stopped by the library, not to borrow books, but to volunteer. She helped a 10-year-old boy named Eli learn to read. He never looked her in the eye. But when she missed a week once, he asked the librarian, "Where's the lady with the soft voice?" Lauren wasn't famous, wasn't rich, wasn't verified on anything but her own conscience. But she was present, to her mother, to her boss, to her community. That's what made her dangerous. At least to a system that counts on people like her staying invisible. The night before the napkin, she'd skipped lunch to buy an extra bottle of arthritis cream for her mom. She hadn't eaten a full meal in 72 hours, and she told no one. Because pride has a silence no poverty can match. That night, as she waited for her burger in the back kitchen, Carlos looked at her and said, "You okay, kid?" "Just tired," she lied. "You want to eat in the back?" She shook her head. "I want to feel like a customer, just for one night." He nodded and smiled, soft, rare. "You've earned it." He had no idea how much she'd sacrificed just for that moment. And neither did she. Because while she cleaned tables, Harold and Margaret had already walked in, had already been watching, had already spoken to the librarian, to Carlos, to the woman at the pharmacy who said, "That girl? She's the reason my grandson got through 3rd grade reading level." They were building a file, a case, an argument, not to prosecute, but to invest. And Lauren? She still thought she was just surviving, still believed she'd be stuck in the same cycle until something broke. But something was about to break, and when it did, the whole city would feel it. When she walked into the diner, she thought the shift would be like any other. She didn't expect to meet the people who'd been watching her life like a legal case file. The sun hadn't even cleared the rooftops when Lauren walked through the back door of Carlos's Diner the next morning. Her apron still smelled like fryer oil. Her arms ached. And her sleep had been broken by her mother coughing on the couch again. But none of that mattered, because when she pushed open the kitchen door and stepped into the dining room, Carlos was already waiting, arms crossed, eyebrows twitching. "You've got visitors," he said. Lauren blinked. "What?" He nodded toward table 5. That's when she saw them. The couple from last night, but not the same. Gone were the rain-soaked coats and sagging shoulders. Margaret now wore a tailored cream jacket, her silver hair twisted into an elegant knot. Harold had traded his damp slacks for a pressed navy suit and polished leather shoes that probably cost more than Lauren's entire paycheck. And this time, they weren't nursing coffee. They were seated confidently, with a leather briefcase on the table and a thin folder in front of them. Lauren's name printed in bold on the tab. Lauren froze. Carlos leaned in and whispered, "They asked for you by name. Full name." A chill swept her spine. She stepped forward slowly, like someone approaching a cliff edge. "Morning," Harold said with a smile that felt both kind and measured. His voice was no longer tired. It was practiced, controlled. "Miss Miller," Margaret said, offering a hand. Lauren shook it, more out of reflex than confidence. The woman's grip was firm, warm, intentional. "Did you sleep well?" Harold asked. Yes, I think so," Margaret smiled. "We didn't." Lauren shifted her weight. "Is something wrong?" "That depends," Harold said, and tapped the folder, "on whether you're ready for the conversation we came here to have." Carlos stepped in. "You want me to give you some privacy?" "Yes, thank you, Carlos," Margaret said. That's when Lauren's stomach officially sank. Carlos never let anyone use the booths for private business, and yet he gave them space, without question. Harold opened the folder. Inside was a single page, followed by a stack of others. The first? A photo. Lauren, holding a plastic bag of groceries outside the corner pharmacy, helping an elderly woman with a walker. The next page? A copy of her high school GPA. Then, a recommendation letter from Mrs. Patterson, her old English teacher. A transcript from the local community center where she volunteered. A signed statement from the librarian. An incident report where she de-escalated a fight between two teenagers near the laundromat last summer. Lauren's eyes widened. What is this?" "A profile," Harold replied. "A file we've been building quietly for the past 4 days." "Why?" Margaret folded her hands gently. "Because kindness is easy when the cameras are on, when there's applause, when there's credit. But what you did last night..." She paused. There were no cameras, no audience, no reward, just a decision. "And your dinner." Harold leaned in. "And that decision told us everything we needed to know." Lauren stared at them like they were speaking a foreign language. "We're not who we appeared to be last night," Harold admitted. "We never lost our wallet. The car wasn't broken. That storm, that was real. But the rest? A test." Lauren stepped back. "A test?" she repeated. Margaret nodded. "We needed to see what kind of person you are when no one's looking. Because we've seen resumes lie. Interviews polished, speeches rehearsed. But a small act of sacrifice," Harold said. "That can't be faked." Lauren crossed her arms, uncertain whether to feel flattered, furious, or afraid. "You manipulated me." "We observed you," Margaret corrected softly. "There's a difference. We created a scenario, yes. But the choice? That was all you." Lauren stayed silent. Then Harold slid a sealed envelope across the table. Inside was a printed letter, on embossed stationery with a gold logo she vaguely remembered from the night before. "Dear Miss Lauren Miller, you are hereby invited to apply for the Whitmore Foundation's Community Advocate Fellowship, Class of 2025. She didn't finish reading. Her throat tightened. "This is some kind of scholarship?" she whispered. "It's more than a scholarship," Harold said. "It's a partnership." Margaret opened the briefcase and pulled out a sleek black binder. Inside, a full scholarship offer to any accredited university in the state. Paid summer internships at existing Whitmore Justice Centers. One-on-one mentorship with senior fellows in law, policy, or social advocacy. A proposed plan to open a new center in Lauren's own neighborhood, eventually led by her. Lauren blinked. "This isn't real," she muttered. "You don't even know me." "But we do," Margaret said gently. We've seen more of who you are than most people ever let anyone see, Harold nodded. The question now is, do you believe you deserve this? Lauren stared down at the table. The napkin from the night before was still folded beside her water glass. Her name was written on it in Harold's hand, and suddenly she didn't feel small. She felt seen. It's easy to say yes to a dream. It's harder when you've built your entire life on surviving without one. Lauren didn't remember walking home that day. She remembered the cold, the sound of wind dragging trash along the sidewalk, the weight of the binder in her backpack, and the way the world felt suddenly too loud and too quiet all at once. She didn't speak to Carlos, didn't answer Sandy's curious texts, didn't open the envelope again. Because it all felt too big, like someone had handed her a key to a door she wasn't sure she was allowed to open. The apartment smelled like Vapo-Rub and microwaved soup. Her mother, Marcia, was half asleep on the couch, an old blanket pulled up to her chest, and the television volume just high enough to murmur through the silence. Lauren set her bag down quietly, toes aching, mind spinning. "You're home early," Marcia said without opening her eyes. "Carlos let me leave after the breakfast shift," Lauren lied. There was a long pause. Then her mother's voice, thinner than usual, reached across the room. "Something happen?" Lauren didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the small kitchenette, filled a glass with tap water, and stared out the window at the building across the alley. The binder still pressed against her spine. Still too heavy. She wanted to forget it, wanted to pretend it never happened, wanted to disappear back into the simplicity of routine. Wake, work, walk, repeat. Because hope had always been the most dangerous thing. Hope required belief, and belief was what got people broken. She took a sip of water. Burned her throat anyway. Behind her, her mother tried to sit up. The couch groaned beneath her. "Lauren." "Yeah? Talk to me." Lauren turned slowly. She wasn't good at crying in front of people, especially not her mother. But her voice cracked anyway. "They want me to leave, Mama." Marcia blinked. "Who?" "The Whitmore Foundation. The couple from last night? They weren't just customers. They were testing me." Her mother's brow furrowed. "They've been watching me for days. They made up a whole story about being stranded. And now they want to give me a scholarship, internships, mentorship. They want to fly me out for summer programs and train me to do community work, to open a justice center one day. They want me to help people, Mama." Her voice rose on that last word like it betrayed her. She wiped her cheek fast, hoping her mother didn't see. But Marcia saw everything. "You sound like someone who just got a miracle," she said softly. Lauren laughed. It came out hollow. "It doesn't feel like one." "Why not?" "Because it's me, Mama." Marcia tilted her head. "And what's wrong with you?" "I'm just a waitress. I didn't even finish college. I've got no savings, no degree, no fancy resume. I walk home every night. I heat soup for dinner. I don't belong in those rooms." Her voice cracked again. She hated the sound of it. And still, she couldn't stop. What if I mess it up? What if they realize I'm not who they think I am? What if I leave, and you're here, and I'm not around, and you need me, and— "Lauren." She stopped. Her mother's voice was firm. The kind of firm Lauren hadn't heard in years. "You didn't ask to carry me. But I want to." "I know you do, and baby, you have." Marcia reached out her hand. Lauren walked over and took it. "I never asked you to pause your life," her mother whispered. "You did that all on your own, out of love, and I'm grateful. But don't you dare use me as a reason to stay small." Tears welled again. "Mama, don't. Let me say this." Marcia squeezed her hand. "You think I don't see what you do every day? You think I didn't notice the new shoes you never bought, the meals you skipped, the dreams you buried under your uniform?" She smiled through watery eyes. "Baby, you've already passed every test this world could throw at you. This scholarship? It's not charity. It's overdue." Lauren lowered her head. "I'm scared." "So am I," Marcia said. "But sometimes, the only way we stop being afraid is by doing the thing we think we can't." Lauren looked up slowly, There was silence for a moment. Then Marcia, with effort, reached behind her. She pulled something from the cushion gap in the couch. An envelope, yellowing at the edges. "What's that?" Marcia handed it to her. Lauren opened it. Inside was a college essay. Her college essay. The one she'd written 4 years ago. She had never submitted it. "I found this last month," Marcia said. "Been waiting for the right time." Lauren read the first line. "My mother taught me that dignity isn't about what you have. It's about who you protect when you have nothing." She stopped reading. Her tears fell fast and quiet. That night, Lauren sat by the window, binder open, staring at the program offer again. It didn't feel like a gift anymore. It felt like a mirror. Like someone had finally reflected back the truth she tried so hard to hide. She wasn't just surviving. She was ready. Almost. You think someone noticed you yesterday. But the truth is, they've been watching you for years, and you just didn't know it yet. A week before the diner. Before the binder. Before the burger she never ate. Lauren was standing in the lobby of a free clinic, holding a clipboard, trying to understand how a girl barely older than her had been sitting there for 4 hours. Crying, shivering, and ignored. Her name was Tasha. 17, pregnant, alone. No ID, no insurance, no one to call. She'd been turned away twice already. Once at the ER. Once here. Lauren had only come by to pick up her mother's medication. But when she saw Tasha curled in the waiting chair, knees drawn to her chest, she couldn't keep walking. The nurse at the window shook her head. "She has to wait." "She's been waiting," Lauren said. 4 hours. "She has no guardian. We can't treat her without forms." "She's bleeding," Lauren snapped. "Do you really need a form to care about that?" Heads turned. Lauren didn't care. She crouched beside the girl and whispered, "We're going to fix this." Then she stood up and walked behind the desk like she worked there. "You can't come back here," the nurse barked. But Lauren had already picked up the phone. She didn't dial 911. She dialed the legal aid number on the flyer posted on the clinic's corkboard. The one no one ever called because they assumed no one would pick up. Someone did. A woman. Lauren gave her the name of the clinic, the situation, the nurse's exact words. Then handed the phone directly to the staff behind the counter. 10 minutes later, a call came through from an attorney. 15 minutes after that, Tasha was being examined by a nurse practitioner. Lauren didn't stay to be thanked. She went home, heated soup for her mother, washed her work uniform in the sink. It was just another Tuesday. What she didn't know was that someone had been watching, not at the clinic, but from the other end of the phone line. The woman who answered that hotline? Her name was Charlotte Reyes, lead policy director for the Whitmore Foundation's Legal Access Division. She wasn't just answering that night because of duty. She was in town for a site visit, scouting cities for their new community justice pilot program. And when she heard Lauren's voice, she didn't forget it. Not the urgency, not the way she demanded help without raising her voice, not the way she used systems, even broken ones, to get results. Charlotte made a note in her travel binder. Lauren Miller. Not a lawyer, not trained, but she's the kind of person we build programs around. 2 days later, Charlotte met with Harold Whitmore for coffee at the Grandview Hotel. She shared what she'd heard on the hotline, told him about the clinic, about the girl, about the voice. "She has no idea what she did," Charlotte said. "But she rerouted an entire chain of inaction." Harold asked one question. "Did she sound like she was trying to be a hero?" "No," Charlotte replied. "She sounded like she was out of options, but still trying." That's when Harold leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Find her." And they did. Within 24 hours, the Whitmore team had a partial profile. No college record, no active resume. But phone calls to a few local contacts painted a clearer picture. The diner girl who walks home every night. The volunteer at the library who tutors kids without asking. The granddaughter who prioritizes medicine over food. By the time Lauren placed that burger on their table in the diner, her name was already circled in red ink. Back in the present, Lauren stood outside her apartment, the binder still in her hands. She hadn't made a decision, but the weight of the past was beginning to rearrange itself in her mind. This wasn't random. It wasn't luck. It wasn't about a burger anymore. She was being invited into a life she'd unknowingly auditioned for years. The next day, she went to the library early. Eli was waiting with his usual nervous shuffle and crumpled worksheet. "Hey, Miss Lauren." "Hey, Eli. Are you okay?" She smiled. "Not sure yet." He sat beside her and opened his reading packet. But before they began, Lauren asked, "Do you know what a fellowship is?" Eli squinted. "Like a group of friends?" "Sort of," she said. "It's when someone gives you the chance to learn more, so you can help more." "Are you going to be in a fellowship?" She didn't answer. But when Eli read the first paragraph out loud, clearer than he ever had, she knew the answer had already started to form. Every story has a turning point. But some don't come with applause. They come with bags packed at 4:30 a.m. and one last look at a neighborhood that raised you. Lauren didn't tell anyone right away. Not Carlos, not Eli, not even Sandy. But the decision had been made. It wasn't loud. There was no lightning bolt, no sudden wind, no music swelling behind her. Just a quiet morning, a folded essay, and the sound of her mother saying, "Go be more than what the world settled for." She called the Whitmore office on a Tuesday. Charlotte Reyes answered. "I'm in," Lauren said. Charlotte didn't say much. Just, "We're ready when you are." 2 days later, a black car arrived on her block just after sunrise. Lauren stood at the curb with one duffel bag, one binder, and a pair of shoes she'd borrowed from her neighbor because hers had holes. Miss Ruby, the 82-year-old across the hall, waved from her window. Carlos had slipped a 20 into her palm the night before with a gruff, "Don't come back unless you're too good for this place." Sandy left a note in the break room. "Not everyone makes it out of this street. Make it count for the ones who don't." Inside the car, the world outside her window turned unfamiliar fast. The streets smoothed out. The trees got taller. The gas stations gave way to office parks and fountains and buildings with names in polished brass. They arrived at a building with glass-like water and ceilings that disappeared into sunlight. A woman at the front desk greeted her by name. "Welcome to the Whitmore Foundation, Miss Miller." Lauren's heart knocked once, hard. A badge was printed, an elevator opened. When she stepped out on the 15th floor, a conference room waited. Clean, white, still. At the head of the table, Harold and Margaret Whitmore. No umbrellas, no deception this time, just clarity. Margaret stood, smiling warmly. "You came," Lauren nodded. "I didn't want to wonder what if." Harold gestured to the seat beside him. "Then let's begin." The day moved like a blur. Presentations. Tours. Introductions to people whose titles were longer than most of her school essays. She shook hands with people who said things like, "You're exactly what we needed." "The community angle you bring is irreplaceable." But she wasn't here for praise. She was here to learn, to build something, to make the weight she carried finally mean something to someone else. The first internship assignment wasn't glamorous. She was sent to shadow the community outreach team at a small legal clinic on the west side of town. Her job? Answer phones? Take intake notes. Listen. And she did. She listened to a woman in tears because her landlord had changed the locks. To a man who couldn't read the restraining order his ex filed against him. To a 13-year-old who asked if he could get legal help to keep his little sister in his custody. Lauren never gave legal advice. She wasn't trained. But what she gave instead? Time, patience, presence. One night, the office manager stayed late to finish paperwork. She passed by Lauren's desk and paused. "You ever think about law school?" Lauren laughed. "I barely survived cafeteria food." The manager didn't smile. "You've got the instincts, the fight. I see it." Lauren didn't know what to say. But that night, when she walked back to her shared dorm suite, She looked up what it would take. Just curiosity, she told herself. Just wondering. Back home, Miss Marcia had her own kind of progress. With the medical assistance Lauren helped her apply for, she began physical therapy. The oxygen tank was gone. She could stand now, just for 10 seconds. But still, 10 seconds more than last month. Her voice on the phone was stronger. "I watched your interview," she told Lauren one night. "What interview?" "You were on the local news, talking about housing rights." Lauren flushed. "You looked like you belonged." She didn't answer. But she kept smiling long after the call ended. Weeks passed. Lauren's binder filled with notes, questions, possibilities. One night she stayed late at the legal clinic, organizing flyers. The cleaning lady, a woman named Miriam, approached her. "You're the new girl?" Lauren nodded. "You the one who gave up her food for strangers?" Lauren blinked. "How do you know that?" Miriam smiled. "People talk. Good things spread." Then she added, "You're not just here to learn. You're here to remind them what justice looks like on the ground." And that's when it hit Lauren. She didn't need to become someone else. She just needed to become more of who she already was. That night, she stood on the rooftop terrace of the Whitmore building. The city stretched out beneath her. Chaotic, beautiful, broken. She looked down at the street below, then up at the stars, and said to no one, "I'm still scared." But her voice didn't shake, because this time she was scared, and moving anyway. Every advocate has a moment they stop watching and start speaking. This was hers. The notice was taped to the apartment door with blue painter's tape. It looked harmless. Just a few printed lines. But it might as well have been a wrecking ball. Eviction notice, 7 days. Lauren read it 3 times. Then once more, just to be sure, it said what she didn't want to believe. The door belonged to Mrs. Carter, Eli's grandmother, the woman who always handed Lauren hard peppermint candies after tutoring, the woman who folded Lauren's tips into a napkin when she missed dinner, the woman who had been living in that same rent-controlled unit for 32 years. And now she was being removed. Lauren stormed into the legal aid office 10 minutes after opening. She dropped the notice on the table. "This isn't legal." The office manager raised an eyebrow. "Let me see it." He scanned the paper, then sighed. "It's probably not legal. But that landlord's firm knows how to dance around code. They've pushed out 3 tenants this month the same way." "They're targeting the elderly," Lauren said. "They're targeting the affordable," he replied. "Same thing." She stared at him. "Well, are we going to help her?" He hesitated. "We're backed up. And honestly, if she's got no lease copy and no documented repairs, it's a hard case. We might lose." Lauren leaned across the table. "Since when do we only fight if we know we'll win?" That night, she sat with Mrs. Carter in her kitchen. The wallpaper peeling, the floor groaning under decades of footsteps. Lauren helped her gather what little documentation she had. A yellowed rental agreement from the 1990s. Handwritten receipts from the previous landlord. A photo of Eli playing in the courtyard, time-stamped, dated 3 years ago. "They want this place because they can charge triple," Mrs. Carter said softly. "And they're going to say you don't belong here," Lauren replied. "But we're not letting them say it without a fight." The next morning, Lauren walked into her supervisor's office, heart pounding. "I want to represent the Carter case at the housing mediation hearing." He didn't look up. "You're not an attorney." "I know." "You've only been here a few weeks." "I know." He finally looked up. "You could make things worse. I also might not. But right now she has no one. Not even herself." There was a long silence. Then, "You'll need someone with a license in the room." "I already asked Charlotte. She agreed to oversee it." That gave him pause. "Fine, 1 hearing, if she consents." "She does." "Then go do the thing." The room was beige and too cold. A folding table. 2 chairs on either side. A court-appointed mediator with a dry cough, and a stack of files she clearly hadn't read yet. On the other side, a lawyer in a gray suit, slick hair, smug smile. A representative from the property company. And Lauren. No title, no tie, no law degree. But she sat tall. Mrs. Carter squeezed her hand. The hearing began. The landlord's lawyer spun a story. Mrs. Carter had no current lease. She failed to report maintenance issues. The unit was unsafe for an elderly tenant. They were relocating her for her own benefit. Lauren kept her eyes on the mediator, waited for her turn. When it came, she didn't raise her voice. She raised her facts. Mrs. Carter has paid rent on time for 32 years. She was never given written notice of lease expiration. Under tenant law, paragraph 14.7a, that constitutes implied renewal. The mediator blinked, took notes. Lauren continued. She submitted a repair request about her leaking bathroom last November. It was ignored. We have the stamped copy. She slid it across the table. The lawyer shifted in his seat. She was told verbally her rent would increase 72% without an updated lease. That violates the city's senior protection code. Lauren took a breath. Then the final note. We also have statements from 4 neighbors, including 2 who were pressured into leaving with similar tactics. Mrs. Carter didn't move, and now she's being punished for staying. Silence followed. Even the mediator looked impressed. The landlord's attorney leaned forward. And your legal status, Ms.? Lauren Miller, Community Advocate Fellow under the Whitmore Foundation. His smirk cracked slightly. Well, he said, adjusting his tie. You make a good storyteller. I'm not telling stories, Lauren said quietly. I'm telling what happened. 10 minutes later, the mediator stood and made a provisional ruling. Eviction paused for 90 days. Further investigation pending. Tenant retains occupancy until formal review. It wasn't a full win, but it wasn't a loss. Mrs. Carter wept. The attorney sulked. Lauren stood still, her heart thundering. Charlotte met her in the hallway after. You didn't blink, she said. I almost passed out. That's how you know you're doing it right. Later that night, back at the dorm, Lauren found a note slipped under her door. Written in red ink, no signature. You just took on a firm that charges $600 an hour and didn't flinch. That girl with the burger? She's still in there, but now she's got something louder than kindness. Credibility. Lauren sat down, hands shaking. It wasn't just that she won time for Mrs. Carter. It was that she'd changed the room. Made people listen. Made someone dangerous flinch. Not bad for a waitress with a borrowed pair of shoes. Some people rise quietly, until the day the whole city realizes. They've already been leading all along. It started with a flyer. Simple, black and white, taped to lampposts and bus stops. Know Your Rights Workshop. Free legal support. This Saturday, or 4 to 11 a.m. location. Community Room, Jefferson Towers Housing Complex. Guest speaker, Lauren Miller, Community Advocate Fellow. It wasn't her idea. It was Eli's. He'd asked, one afternoon during tutoring. Why don't more people know the things you know? Lauren had smiled. I'm still learning too. But you ask the questions, he said. Most people don't know what to ask. That hit her harder than any courtroom silence ever had. By 11 a.m., the folding chairs were full. By 11:15, people were standing in the back. By 11:20, someone opened the windows just to hear from outside. Lauren stood at the front of the room. No script, no lawyer's license, no podium, just a cheap microphone. And a community that finally looked at her like she belonged there. She opened with a story. Not about Mrs. Carter, not about Whitmore, not even about herself, but about a girl at a diner, and a couple she thought were strangers, about a burger, and a choice, and the idea that kindness, when it costs you something, is the loudest kind. People didn't clap. They leaned in. And when she explained rental laws, wage protection, ICE detainment protocols, and what to do when police ask for ID, they didn't get confused. They took notes, because for the first time, someone wasn't talking down to them. She was talking from inside their story. Afterward, a line formed. People asking about eviction letters, traffic tickets, missing wages. Lauren didn't have every answer. But she had a folder, a network, a place to start. And that was more than most had ever been given. At the very end, a young girl approached. 11, maybe 12. Black hoodie, torn notebook, braids tied with fading pink rubber bands. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at Lauren like she was trying to memorize her face. Then she held out a napkin, folded, soft, a little greasy around the edges. Lauren took it slowly. On it, in pencil, were 4 words. "Can I be you?" Lauren blinked hard. Kneeling down, she whispered, "You can be you, and you might be even more." The girl nodded, then pulled out a second napkin. "Write your name," she said, "so I don't forget." Lauren smiled and took the pen. "Lauren Miller," she wrote. Then below it, "Don't wait for permission." That night, Lauren walked home the long way, past the old pharmacy, past the bus bench where she once cried over her mother's prescriptions, past the diner where it all began. Carlos was inside, counting the register. He looked up, nodded. She waved, kept walking. When she reached her building, Miss Ruby was on the front steps. "News said they might rename the clinic after you." Lauren laughed. "Don't they have better people?" "Not today," Miss Ruby said. "Today they've got the one that showed up." Upstairs, her mother was waiting with her favorite blanket and leftover stew. "How was the workshop?" she asked. Lauren sat down slowly, then said the quiet truth. "I think I finally believe I belong." Marcia smiled, and for a moment the oxygen tank in the corner didn't matter. "You always did. You just had to walk far enough for the world to catch up." Later that night, Lauren looked through her notes, found the first napkin Harold ever wrote her name on. She slid it next to the one from the girl today. 2 different handwriting styles, 2 different beginnings, same dream, same heartbeat. She pulled out her phone, typed a message to Charlotte. "Yes, I want to apply for law school." Then she hit send. At 5:12 a.m. the next morning, Lauren woke up without an alarm. Not out of duty, not out of fear, but because there were names on napkins, and rooms waiting to be changed.